This video is sponsored by LastPass. What's up guys, Jared again. After seeing how the anime studio Madhouse knocked Season 2 of Mob Psycho 100 right out of the park, I, along with most, was pretty stoked to see what they would do with everyone's favorite OP superhero, Saitama, or as he's known in Season 2, Bald Cape. But somewhere between the middling Episode 1 and where we are now, I came to the conclusion that One Punch Man just flat out isn't delivering in its second outing. Sure, the animation quality has taken an unfortunate hit, but there are still some good fight scenes and a few laughs as well. But ultimately, where Season 2 fails is exactly what made Season 1 such a success. Its adherence to the formal conventions of anime. Now, before you nuke this video to oblivion, I'm not saying that Season 1 wasn't a critique of the shonen genre. It was. But for all One Punch Man's riffing on series like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto, Season 1 remained sharp because it still followed a basic shonen formula. Season 2, though, not so much. So join me for this Wisecrack edition on One Punch Man Season 2, What Went Wrong? And obviously, spoilers ahead. But before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, LastPass. LastPass is a premium password manager, so you don't have to worry about relying on weak passwords or remembering the 7 trillion different ones you need these days for all your digital adulting needs. LastPass auto-generates strong passwords and fills in your credentials for you every time you visit a site. With unlimited storage, you can feel confident that you will have a unique and protected password for everything. That means you'll never have to write down, remember, or reset another password. I hate having a million post-it notes lying around with my personal info on them, and I hate reset emails even more, especially if the reset email is linked to an old account that you can't access anymore, or if the reset email even ever comes. It's always a nightmare. LastPass is also on iOS and Android, so you'll be able to log into the sites you'll need easily no matter where you are. I've forgotten passwords at least 300 times in my life, and LastPass basically puts password management on autopilot, which is big for me. So take control of your online information and consolidate your passwords into one secure vault. Download LastPass today by using the link in the description. Thanks to LastPass for sponsoring this video, and now, back to the show. Alright guys, a quick recap of what's going on with our Bald Crusader is in order. Saitama lives in a world populated by heroes and monsters. After being royally rejected for an entry-level job, Saitama stumbles upon this deeply unfortunate-looking child who sharpied nipples on this equally unfortunate-looking monster. Remembering how he once wanted to be a hero, Saitama decides to protect our ugly youth and disembowels our crab-based baddie. 3 years of training later, and the results are clear. But with all this power comes immense boredom. Whether it's training his new disciple Genos, or climbing up the ranks of the Hero Association, or even defeating a world-ending threat like Boros, Saitama's sheer strength saps the fun out of life. As such, a lot of Saitama's problems in the show don't revolve around getting stronger, but rather navigating everyday life. And this is where One Punch Man leverages a lot of its humor. For example, while every character and their mom loves to monologue on their novel origin story, Saitama's insane strength comes from a mediocre exercise routine of 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, you know the drill. In moments like these, the show parodies the traditional shonen trope of heroes and villains one-upping each other through a constant slew of new powers, like Goku going Super Saiyan, or Sasuke gaining the Mangekyo Sharingan, or whatever they do in Bleach. Instead, Saitama's battles often end in an anticlimax. We're not watching All Might or Deku overcome their weaknesses and deliver a devastating finishing blow. Instead, we're watching Saitama freak out mid-fight about a bargain sale at the local supermarket. And even without a gag, it always ends with a single punch. Season 2 largely continues this trend with a few new plot elements. Saitama is still climbing the ranks of the Hero Association, but with the self-proclaimed hero hunter Garo on the loose, Saitama has entered a martial arts competition to learn how to defeat him. Never mind the fact that Saitama does exactly that here, and here. All the while, a newly minted Monsters Association is trying to create a world where their king Orochi reigns supreme, creating absolute chaos in the process. So, if Season 2 has all the same trappings of Season 1 along with a new cast of enemies, what exactly is going wrong here? To answer that, we're going to have to take a look at what makes the shonen genre tick. As the history of anime will show, overpowered protagonists are nothing new. Just look at the breakout hit this year. That time I got reincarnated as a slime, which focuses on a salaryman who dies only to be reborn in a fantasy world as a super stacked slime. Seriously, this thing can absorb any monster and gain their power, which is the definition of OP. But when your hero is already the world's strongest, you have yourself a problem. After all, if your hero can already beat the big baddie from the get-go, then how do you build conflict? The answer, for shonen at least, lies in a 3-part formula for plot. Pacing plus information plus side stories equals conflict. So let's break that formula down. Did you ever wonder why it took so many episodes for Goku to arrive on planet Namek? Sure, he was busy training at 100 times Earth's gravity so he could take on Frieza. But there's another much simpler reason: to build tension. See, for our overpowered heroes, there's little doubt in the audience's mind that they can beat the villain from the start, but that would make for some very quick and very boring TV. As such, shows need a way to delay the hero's entry, usually through a combination of clever pacing and what I like to call asymmetric information. Asymmetric information refers to information that the audience, and oftentimes other characters, is privy to, but our main hero is not. So while Goku literally spends 19 episodes hurtling through space, blissfully unaware of what's happening on Namek, the audience is slowly growing more anxious as it watches Krillin and Gohan gather the Dragon Balls and brush ever closer to Frieza. But in delaying your main hero's arrival, you're arguably putting your main plotline, or your A story in TV speak, on hold. As a consequence, shows have to really drum up their B and C stories, more commonly known as side plots, in order to compensate. Basically, if your main hero's not doing anything, then the rest of the cast needs to pick up the slack. In doing so, these B and C stories will help drive the overall narrative forward, letting the hero swoop in at the last minute and bring the main plotline to a close. Keeping with our DBZ example, we spend most of our time on Namek following 2 groups: Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma in one group, and Vegeta in another. These 2 groups make up our B and C plots respectively. Gohan and company are looking for the Dragon Balls to revive their dead friends, while simultaneously trying to save the last of the Namek people from Frieza's ruthless slaughter. Vegeta, on the other hand, is searching for the Dragon Balls to receive immortality, thereby guaranteeing that he can kill Frieza, the guy who destroyed his planet. And it's no coincidence that where these 2 plotlines come to a point is also when Goku arrives. Under attack by Frieza's elite mercenary brigade, the 2 groups form an uneasy alliance, agreeing to use one wish to make Vegeta immortal, and the other 2 to revive Gohan's dead friends. But just when things couldn't be any worse, with the gang beaten half to death and all 7 of the Dragon Balls in Frieza's possession, who should finally land on Namek but our hero? From there, it's a straightforward march right to Frieza vs Goku, and the rest is history. And sure, this 1-2 punch of pacing and asymmetric information might seem cheap, but it's the bread and butter of animes with OP characters. Case in point, Season 1 of One Punch Man is a masterclass of this technique. Regardless of who the baddie is, Saitama only enters the fray at the last moment, usually as we watch characters like Genos take a beating. We can see this happening here, and here, and here. But where I think Season 1 pulled this technique off best is in the Deep Sea King arc. In it, well, these guys show up. After watching several A-class heroes and even a few S-class ones bite the dust, Genos and Saitama decide to rush to the rescue. Of course, Genos goes to scout the scene first, leaving Saitama in the dark, which is simultaneously how the show controls the pacing and creates the asymmetric information of the arc.
まであとどのくらいだ?
もうそろそろですが、まだ反応がありません。俺が先に行って場所が分かり次第すぐに先生に連絡します。
While Saitama wanders around for nearly 2 episodes completely clueless, the tension is left to boil through the rising stakes of the B and C stories. First, One Punch Man sets the stage by letting us watch the Sea King get increasingly more powerful in the rain, even beating Speed of Sound Sonic. You know, the guy Saitama accidentally punched in the dick. The stakes then skyrocket as the Deep Sea King stumbles upon a whole stadium full of evacuees, vowing to kill each and every one of them. That is, before our B-plot arrives in the form of Genos. While the two face off in an increasing arms race of abilities, Genos ultimately loses when he sacrifices himself to protect an innocent bystander. A ball of acid later, and Genos is left looking like this. As all hope seems lost though, our C-plot enters the fray, Moomin Rider. Despite being downright mediocre, the show painstakingly crafts an arc for this lovable hero. The first episode of the Deep Sea King arc opens with this no-name hero worrying about Saitama's recent rise in the ranks.
C 級見ない顔だ。俺も頑張らないとな。
Then, when the threat level gets raised from Tiger to Demon, it shows Moomin Rider refusing to run away like all the other C-class heroes.
おい、やめといた方がいいぜ。もう俺たち C 級の出る幕はない。え？
たった今情報が入ったんだ。
緊急避難警報。最大レベルがトラから鬼に上がりました。
つうわけだ。
All of this leads to an amazing climax when, against all common sense, Moomin Rider, whose only ability is that he rides a bicycle, tries to take on the Deep Sea King himself. It's a powerful scene, one that contains all of One Punch Man's love for genre inversions, right down to that horrible pause when it's clear that Moomin Rider isn't up to the task. But just like when Goku arrives on Namek, Saitama finally arrives just as the B and C plots come to a head.
よくやった。ナイスファイト。
In holding the hero back until the final moment, the show manages to drive the tension up to a crisis point, before using our boy Baldcape to resolve it all with one final punch. Now, structurally, you might be thinking that Season 2 has done the same thing, and I'll grant you that it does sometimes. Let's look at the season's main arc, for example, the martial arts tournament. In it, Saitama impersonates Silver Fang student Shiranko in order to learn what true martial arts is and take on the hero hunter Garo. Of course, the series doesn't just propel Saitama to the finals, and we spend most of the episodes either watching Saitama instant KO lower-ranking opponents, or hear him talk with his new buddy Nigamushi.
チャランコ、なぜ俺がこの大会に出場するかわかるか？
どうでもいいから、早くどっか行ってくんねえかな。
And sure, the arc ends with a halfway decent fight between Saitama and Suryu, complete with a typical One Punch Man inversion, Saitama's complete misunderstanding of martial arts.
なるほど、少し分かってきたぞ。
君に武術の何たるかが少しは伝わったのかな？
武術とは要するに、なんか動きがかっこいいものだな。
Given all these similarities, you'd expect this arc to work, but it doesn't. And it all comes back to pacing, information, and your B and C stories. So let's step back and take a broader view of the season. As it turns out, a large part of why this arc falls so dramatically flat is because Saitama's story is not the A-plot. Unlike the Deep Sea King arc, Saitama's quest to experience martial arts isn't what's driving the larger story forward. In fact, outside of the arena, we see a brand new Monsters Association rise up, wreak all kinds of havoc, and take a hostage, all with the aim of putting an end to the Heroes Association as we know it. In this sense, Genos and the other heroes' struggle against this new group forms the true meat of our larger narrative, our A-plot, if you will. And sure, we're 100% willing to grant that this arc employs some clever use of pacing and asymmetric information in order to keep Saitama from entering the fray. After all, because Saitama is locked into the tournament, he has absolutely no clue what's going on outside the arena, leaving other characters like Genos to clean up the mess.
怪人発生か。しかし件数が多すぎるな。CC、この町にも発生している。先生に伝えるべきか。いや、俺が行けば済む話だ。
However, Season 2 doesn't try to connect Saitama to this larger storyline, in essence, relegating our boy Baldcape to the B-plot. In fact, his fight against Suryu and the rest of the martial arts nobodies is less connected to the A-plot than the C-plot, Garo's quest to become a monster. And at least Garo is aware of and continually approached by the Monsters Association.
怪人協会、食いついたか。ついてくるがいい。我々のアジトに案内してやろう。お、興味ねえ、失せろ。
As a result, instead of watching our side stories build to a crescendo for our main storyline, we're left feeling like our main hero did nothing. Sure, Genos is smashed to pieces and things seem bleak, but for what? In essence, none of our storylines in the bulk of Season 2 are working in concert with one another, creating a fractured narrative that never truly builds to a climax. Of course, there's one bright spot in Season 2 that works as a standalone arc. One where the shonen formula is properly deployed and where the arc's specific A, B, and C plots properly gel, even if the A, B, and C's of Season 2 don't. I'm talking about the 2 episodes following Saitama's fight with Suryu. In it, the Monsters Association barges into the arena demanding the martial artists join their ranks by eating monster cells.
その怪人細胞を食え。そうすれば怪人になれる。
However, Saitama, fearing what the tournament officials will do after his cover is blown, has long since escaped. Instead, for the entirety of the first episode, the audience watches Suryu and the other martial artists fight back against Goketsu, the very same monster that nearly killed Genos. Already we can see the shonen formula in action. Controlling the pace via Saitama's delayed entry? Check. Upping the stakes through asymmetric information? Check. But we can also see the A, B, and C plots finally building on one another. First, we watch the B plot, which focuses on Suryu's growth. When first introduced to this world-class martial artist, we're pretty much led to believe that the guy's a d***. The only reason he wants to be strong is so he can coast through life, and his views on heroes are, well, less than stellar.
ヒーローなんて名前だけさ。職業でやってる割に善行とか正義とか恩着せがましいし、あんなレベルの人たちがどれだけ頑張っても。
However, as we watch other martial artists give in to the temptation of the Monsters Association, Suryu endears himself to us by remaining firm.
なるほどね。どんな世界でも自分が楽しく過ごせるなら問題はないか。だけどあいにくあんたみたいなブサイクになるのは絶対嫌なんでね。
And with the help of our C plot, the selfless arrival of the 2 heroes Suryu mercilessly defeated in tournament, Lightning Max and Snek, we watch Suryu gain a new respect for our heroes. Of course, the point of the B and C storylines is to build tension for our main hero and the A plot, which is exactly what happens here. The situation goes from bad to worse when Snek and Lightning Max are defeated, and takes another nosedive when the martial artist Bakuzan successfully transforms into a monster, blocking Suryu's escape. Left on the verge of death, Suryu completes his arc by finally calling out for a hero himself.
誰か助けてくれ！怪人がここに怪人がいるんだ！誰かいませんか？怪人に襲われてるんだ！お願いだ！ヒーロー！そうだ！ヒーロー！聞こえていたらこっちに来てくれ！
And of course, this is when our hero and the A plot finally arrives.
なんだお前は。
ヒーローをやっているものだ。助けを呼ぶ声聞こえたぜ水流。よく一人で耐えたな。あとは任せとけ。
One short punch later, and it's over.
なんだったんだこいつ。
But here's the thing. While those 2 episodes really captured what made Season 1 so great, it was just too little, too late. As an audience member, it's just plain boring to watch your hero linger on the sidelines for over half a season, only to have them briefly occupy the spotlight for 2 episodes. While Season 1 regularly built its episodes with Saitama at its center, always using the shonen formula to drive tension to a max, Season 2 largely misses the mark. And maybe this is intentional. If there's one series that's known for subverting tropes, it's One Punch Man. And maybe Season 2 amounts to a conscious rejection of the very shonen formula that worked so well in Season 1. In fact, sometimes it feels like this is downright the case, like when Saitama finds out all the monsters retreated 30 minutes before he arrived on the scene.
くそ。そんな一大事を見逃すなんて。他のヒーローたちは外で戦ってたのに。何やってんだ俺は。
But maybe some conventions shouldn't be thrown out the window. With Genos being rushed off to be repaired and the Hero Association preparing for war, the A-plot and any role Saitama can play in it is banished to the background. Instead, Saitama returns to, well, playing video games with King.
今まで随分と調子乗ってくれたじゃねえか。今日がてめえの最後だぜ。
おらおらおらおら！連続ジャグしたキック！俺が発見した雨技だ！
Of course, this is part of the joke. Rather than training for the ultimate battle, Saitama is getting increasingly frustrated by losing to King, and only takes a brief break to defeat the Elder Centipede with a single punch. It's not that this isn't funny, it is, It's that whereas this was once a show about Saitama, it now feels like he's merely appended at the end of whatever arc needs to find completion. He's now more of a plot element than a character. But what do you think, Wisecrack? Is the main problem with Season 2 the show's inability to execute the same shonen formula that made Season 1 so great? Or is it something simpler, like the joke has simply run on too long? Maybe we're tired of all the spoofs on the world's strongest hero. Whatever your take, remember to drop us a line in the comments section and let us know. Thanks to all our patrons who support the channel and our podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and as always, peace.